Hello, welcome. Let us discuss how to take thread dump. The method of taking a thread dump varies depending on various factors. The method of taking a thread dump depends on operating system and hosting environment, the tools that you are using, and the application framework. One more thing to keep in mind while taking a thread dump is we collect minimum of 3 to 4 thread dumps at an interval of 5 to 10 seconds, one after other, so that we can observe the trend whether the threads are changing their status or not. By taking just one thread dump, you may not be able to identify whether a thread is moving from one state to another or not. So whenever we are taking a thread dump, we take 3 to 4 thread dumps one after other at an interval of 5 to 10 second of gap in between. Now before going into the commands for taking a thread dump, let us understand where to take thread dump. We need to take a thread dump on the server where the application is running. This is the application server. Here we need to take the thread dump. But sometimes we may not have access to the server. In that case, we can use some JVM monitoring tools such as Visual VM or a JConsole to connect to the server and take a thread dump. The thread dump is generally displayed on these tools itself, and you can download those thread dump as well. But these tools provide an option to connect to the server and take a thread dump. For example, let me show Visual VM. Here you can see you can have a remote connection here. You need to provide host name, port number and other details, and you can connect to the server so that you can take a thread dump. We will look into that later, but remember that these tools provide option to connect to the server remotely and take a thread dump. So this is one option, but there are also other options where you can take a thread dump without logging into the server. For example, there are application performance monitoring tools such as Dynatrace and App Dynamics. You need to install those tools on the monitoring server, and you also need to install monitoring agent on the application server, and this agent will monitor this server and share the data to these tools which are running on the monitoring server. And by connecting with this monitoring server, we can get the details on the client. You can access that on the web browser using a URL, and it will display in the dashboard format. Here all the details of the thread dump you can get in the dashboard format if you are using these application performance monitoring tools such as Dynatrace or App Dynamics. This monitoring agent will monitor this application server and take the thread dump and share the thread dump with the monitoring server. And here monitoring server will store the thread dump details, and you can access these details using the URL, and it will display on your client machine in the dashboard format. So here are the couple of things you need to remember. If you have direct access to the server, you can remotely log into the server here, and you can take a thread dump by executing the commands. We will look into some of the commands for taking a thread dump later, but we need to log in here and execute the commands so that thread dump can be taken directly on the server. If you do not have access to the server, you can use these JVM monitoring tools, or you can use these application performance monitoring tools or APM tools such as Dynatrace and App Dynamics. In that case, you need to install the monitoring agent here, and this agent will take a thread dump and share it with the monitoring server. This thread dump detail stored on this monitoring server can be accessed from this client machine using the dashboard. And using this dashboard, you can also trigger the thread dump, and it will send this trigger here, and it will in turn send a trigger to this monitoring agent, and it will take a thread dump, right? We can directly take a thread dump from this dashboard here. So we have understood you can take a thread dump by logging into the server. You can also take a thread dump remotely using these tools, using these JVM tools, or you can use this application performance monitoring tools. One more thing to remember here is to enable these tools to communicate with the server. Here you need to enable JMX port. These tools remotely connect to this server using JMX, that is Java Management Extension. You need to enable those ports on this server so that these tools can connect here. And once a thread dump is taken using these tools, they will display on these tools itself, and you will also have an option to extract and store in your machine.
and if you are using this APM tools, it will be stored in this server and you can access that using the URL, and it will be displayed as a dashboard in your client machine. In summary, if you have server access, log in and take the thread dump directly using the tools like JStack. You need to execute some commands on the server. We will discuss about the commands later. If you don't have direct access to the server, you can ask the admin team to configure JMX, and you can connect using this JVM tools. You can remotely capture the thread dump, and you can also use the tools like App Dynamics and Dynatrace to remotely take a thread dump. In this case, you need to install a monitoring agent on the application server, and you need to install these tools on the monitoring server, and thread dump details stored on the monitoring server can be accessed using the URL, and it will display in the dashboard format here in the client. So these tools are not free tools. These APM tools, Dynatrace and App Dynamic, are paid tools. They are not free. We need to pay and get the license. We can also install the monitoring on the application server as well, but it will increase the load on the application server. So ideally, we should have a separate monitoring server so that load on the application server will be less. This is the client machine where user interacts with the performance monitoring tools such as App Dynamics and Dynatrace using a dashboard, a web-based UI or a UI dashboard, and you can communicate with the monitoring server, and you can also trigger the thread dump, and this client machine will communicate with the monitoring server, and then it will communicate with the monitoring agent, and once it takes the thread dump here, and it will share to the monitoring server. Here application server means your application will be hosted. You may be running a banking application or an insurance application, right? Those applications will be running on this application server. And here we will also have a monitoring agent which will monitor and take the thread dump, and it will communicate with this monitoring server so that it can share the thread dump with this monitoring server. This monitoring server acts as a central hub for processing and storing the performance data, right? This data is accessed by the client using the dashboard. This monitoring server will send the reports and data to the client PC,